Today, we're going to talk about 12 business habits that have kept my business growing throughout the years, some things that have saved me time, some systems that work for me. And if you are a coach or online service provider, these will most likely work well for you too. Before we get into today's Health Coach Nation podcast episode, I just want to share my name is Hailey Rowe. I'm a marketing and sales coach and strategist for online entrepreneurs, specifically wellness professionals, coaches, people who have online services. And my goal is to help you take the dread and the dauntingness out of sales and marketing and help you find a weekly business protocol that works for you and your goals. And if you are new here, you're always welcome to check out my free gifts over at haileyrowe.com. One in particular that will definitely help you with your time management habits, since we're talking about habits today, is my free weekly planning system. It takes you through how to plan your week, how to focus on the client generating activities instead of the busy work, the 5 golden questions I use at the end of every week to keep improving, keep refining. And it's available at haileyrowe.com/time planning. Or you could just DM me on Instagram if you want the link directly. Just mention the time management freebie and I will send it over. I'm on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe. So let's get into the 12 habits that I do. So the first one is deciding to do certain tasks at certain times. And I'm going to explain what I mean. So I get a lot of social media messages, partly because part of my lead generation, especially on LinkedIn, is sending connection requests, connecting with my niche or connecting with potential partners or collab partners. And we start a conversation with them. And when I say we, I mean myself. I do the responding, but I do have a virtual assistant who sends out the connection requests for me. And that's been really helpful. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm at the point where I need to start outsourcing some of my lead gen, feel free to reach out. That's something I help clients with, and I give them a standard operating procedure and help them train their VA and things like that. But the thing that I do personally is I will, if I'm going to answer social media messages, I batch it all at once so that you're not answering social media messages all throughout the day as soon as you get the ping, because let's face it, that will totally derail your business because you're never able to focus on big projects or get anything done because you're always just jumping to your social media inbox. However, I do know that answering my social media messages is a very good use of my time because it's directly connecting with partners and clients or potential clients, right? So I have to make time for it, but I'm very choosy about when I do it. And so when I typically do it are the following. Number one, I either batch it once a week, and usually it's on a day when I don't have a bunch of meetings, or I do it when I'm in the waiting room at places, or I'm maybe at the airport and I'm sitting at the gate waiting to get on the plane, or I have a bunch of time in a long car ride and I'm just going to be sitting there. So I typically only try to do it when I'm in places because it's a task that I can do on the go when I'm just sitting still and waiting somewhere. Versus when I'm home, a lot of times I need to be on my computer doing something maybe more technical. So I'm choosy, like I try to put it when I'm going to be sitting somewhere for a while. Or I'll do like a slow treadmill walk and habit stack and reply to my messages there. And one pro tip with this habit in particular, if you're going to get in the habit of weekly checking your messages, maybe you decide you're going to do it 3 times a week. You're going to check your messages and answer them. Or maybe you decide once a day, you're just going to do an end of day check. But when you do, if you find yourself repeating yourself all the time, like I am saying the exact same thing to a lot of the same questions, do yourself a favor, copy and paste what you wrote, put it in a notes app on your phone so it's easy to find. And eventually what's really cool is you can have an SOP almost for yourself or for your team of, hey, when we get this question, here's what we want to say, right? So just make sure that if you are going to be answering messages on social media or checking your email with this habit, you decide when's the best time for me to do it, and make sure you're batching it instead of doing it all throughout the day. Also, make sure you're copying and pasting repetitive responses. And if you are using a social media platform that has an unread filter, like LinkedIn, you can click go to my unread filter and you can check all of your unread messages at once. Do that to make your life so much easier. Also, just a random side note I just want to share before we move on to the next habit is if you're checking messages on LinkedIn and you have Sales Navigator, you have two inboxes. You have your main LinkedIn inbox and you have your Sales Navigator inbox, and you actually have to check both inboxes. So don't skip that step. Okay, so the next habit that is really important is if you have a task that just popped up right in front of you and it takes 5 minutes or less to do it. Just do it. So if I, for example, just wrapped up a call and I have 5 minutes before my next call and someone asked me to send them something really quick, if it takes me less than 5 minutes, rather than me writing it down on my to-do list to do later, which I will do if it takes longer than 5 minutes, I typically just will do it very quickly. So it's out of sight. It's not out of sight, out of mind. And it's something quick and easy. Now, for those of you, though, who never get to your important tasks because you're always doing the short, busy work tasks that come up, this habit might not actually be for you. But if you're like me, where I write every to-do down and I put it in order and I do it in order, sometimes for me, it just doesn't make sense when I could just quickly do it right this second and finish it. So that's a good habit that I have formed, that way I don't have things weighing on me or adding to my to-do list when I could just nip it in the bud and do it right now. Now, if there's something more important, like if I have a deadline that day or something like that, I will wait and I will write it down so my brain's not, forgetting about it or feeling stressed that it's in my head and I'm going to forget to do it. And with this task too, this applies to, like, for example, after client sessions, I'll leave a little bonus time to write up their notes and send them their notes. That doesn't always take me 5 minutes, but I do try to do it right when we're fresh and we have the session, so that it's not something I have to return back to later. Same thing with, like, just this morning, I had a collaboration call and now I have to fill out a form for them for the collab that we're doing. And so, like, I'll fill that out right after the call if the call went under the scheduled time allotted for the call, so that, again, I'm not realizing I have to do that later. Okay, the next habit number 3, is with emails. So if you have a very loaded email inbox like I do, the key tip here and the habit here is do not open them unless you're ready to respond. So yes, if it's something where you think you need to take a preview of it and simmer with it, I will say those are emails I do open and let sit in my head for a little while. But if it's something where you catch yourself reading an email and then marking it unread and continuing that pattern instead of actually reading it, answering it, and moving on, then set a boundary for yourself that maybe once a day or a couple times a week, you're going to batch opening and replying to emails. And I know that this one's tough because it can feel like, oh, well, I have to respond to this person right this second. But it really is not the best use of your time, and it's better to batch if you can. Okay, next habit is having to do with content creation. So, by the way, if you're stuck with content creation, if you don't know what to write about, you don't know what to do when it comes to creating posts that create interest in your actual offers, I do have a free content roadmap at haileyrowe.com/content-roadmap. But one thing I really like to do with content is I like to batch it on my phone notes on airplanes. And if you never travel, this habit might not work for you. But for me, it's really nice because I can knock out a lot of content at once. I don't have internet on the airplane, and I can really focus. But you could also do this on a Sunday morning or a weekend, if you don't have any plans on a Sunday evening or something like that. I find it's best to do content when you're uninterrupted, you don't have a bunch of meetings, you're not brain dead from your entire day, and you can really batch it. However, I will tell you, when I don't have content batched, which is a lot of the time I am coming up with it the day of, which is not the best practice, but sometimes that's what happens. I actually put it at the end of the day. And most people will be like, why? Aren't you like brain dead? No. For me, I want to do my important client generating tasks during the day when I'm sharp. And I want to do the creative, like, this content for me is pretty easy. And it's pretty easy to come up with ideas because I have constant inspiration from my clients, whatever we talked about that day or FAQ I'm getting. So I never really run out of ideas. And if I get stuck, I have ideas logged in my phone that I can go to and further develop. And sometimes I'll also put like my brand guide that has my pillars, my values, what my ideal clients struggle with, who my ideal clients are. Like, I have a whole guide about that. And sometimes I'll give it to ChatGPT. I'll give it my draft of my idea, and then I'll have it help me finish it or refine it or add to it or tighten it up or grammar check, things like that. And it makes it a lot easier at the end of the day to just do my post, get it done in 20 minutes or less. And that is something that I do. But when I have the chance to batch it, I love doing it when I'm traveling or like on an airplane. Or if you guys have long car rides, you could do it there. If you don't get car sick, obviously. Okay, the next habit. So now we're moving on to habit number 5, which is weekly reflection. Okay, so in the inner circle, one of the things I do with my clients every week is I give them questions to reflect. And it's also so that we can stay on the same page on whether or not they're moving towards their goals, what they need to improve for the next week, kind of figuring out and digesting what happened this week, what went well, what didn't go well, what improvements do they want to make, how many offers did they make this week, either to their freebie or their paid offer, what kind of accomplishments happened or what kind of lessons happened this week. And I do the same reflection. And a lot of times I share it in the Slack community with my clients so that they can see just kind of how I organize my thoughts and how every week I reflect and look at what has happened. Because the reason for this, and I have a whole entire podcast episode about reflection and the importance of it. I'll have to find the link and I'll put it in the show notes for this episode. But the reason why we want to reflect is a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a form of tracking, meaning you're not living on autopilot and then looking back later and being like, what happened? It's a form of tracking every week. Are you staying connected to your goals? And what gets tracked gets improved, right? It also is a good way to not get to a point where you hit a rock bottom and you didn't realize it, right? Because if we evaluate every week, you're going to start to notice, ooh, I was slipping a little bit on blank, and you could actually address it and create new strategies for the next week to improve, instead of getting to a point where it's like, oh no, I'm really, at a low point and I need to revamp my entire life, right? Which is what people do with like New Year's resolutions. If you think about it, they start the new year all excited and they have big changes they want to make, but we know that change happens in small increments. And so when you can break down just your day or just your 1 week and see what were my good choices this week? How can I get better next week? What do I want to do less of next week? What do I want to do more of this week? And it's a constant, small, bite-sized way of going about reflecting and evaluating. That's really what changes your life and changes your business. So that has helped me grow exponentially in my business. The reason why is because, too, sometimes I'll look back at my calendar for the week and I'll see leads I need to follow up with. I'll see collab partners I forgot to, send them whatever they needed for more collabs. Or I'll see that, I had some kind of summit where I need to do follow-ups now with the leads that I got from it or things like that. So it's a constant reminder too of things you might have missed in the week when you look back at your calendar and you evaluate. Okay, the next habit is listening to business podcasts or personal development podcasts or audiobooks around my goals on my walks and in the car and doing chores, right? So I'm a big fan of growing and focusing on areas you want to improve. I do think sometimes people overconsume, over listen to things to the point where they never take action on anything. So I like to do this kind of stuff when I'm already doing something, when I'm walking, when I'm in the car, things like that, so that I don't fall for, I'm just going to sit in my work chair and do my work hours and spend my work hours consuming stuff. I want to spend my work hours working, and then I want to spend my driving hours or my walking hours listening to personal development or podcasts or things like that. And the reason why this one's important is because when we're training our mind and directing our mind to positive things, that is really powerful versus when you're listening to the news or you're listening to something negative, or, sometimes it's good to listen to music or let your mind wander or just sit in silence. However, if that's the only thing you do, you probably never get time to learn new things and stay sharp in your field and listen to things that grow you or make you think about things differently. So to me, that's been one of the most valuable habits because number one, it keeps me connected in my field. Number two, I feel like I never run out of inspiration or prompts or ideas for me to talk about in content. It spurs new ideas and it inspires me and energizes me and keeps me going and makes me never burn out. So for me, I think that it's a really useful habit. Now, there are times when I will, make notes or pause listening to something until I've implemented something from something else I listened to. So you have to have some self-control around, am I doing anything with what I'm listening to? And if not, sometimes you might need to pause and just make sure you're doing some things before you listen to more. But for the most part, I think it's a really positive habit. Okay, the next habit is less scrolling on social media, more shifting to creating or answering messages. So when I catch myself scrolling on social media, I immediately, now my brain knows I'm doing it. It's not subconscious. I'm very aware. I'm like, uh-oh, what are you doing? Why are you watching this reel about AI cats fighting, doing karate? Yeah, that was the one I watched yesterday, was AI cats doing karate in little kimono, little outfits. So I caught myself and I was like, what are you doing? And when I catch myself, I go to my message inbox and I reply to the unread, a message or two. And then I get off my phone. Why? Because it tells my brain, hey, we use social media to connect and do business tasks. We do not use social media to just sit here and scroll for hours. And I do set a rule that I have one exception on the weekends when I watch all my reels that my peeps send me, AKA my sister, my fiance, my friends, etc. Okay. Now, sometimes I do that once a day at the end of the day as like an unwinding thing, which I know most people will be like, that's not unwinding. Social media gets your brain going, blah, blah, blah. But that's fine. It works for me. It's at the end of the day. I've already done my work. It's fine. So, however, though, the goal and what I try to do is less scrolling, more using social media for business and seeing it that way. And that's a habit that's served me well because I don't go into, like, when I go to make a post, I go to make a post. I don't look at somebody else's and then compare myself and then go down a rabbit hole, so on and so forth, which I know many of you go through because I hear my clients say that. Okay, the next habit is end of year reflection. So we talked about weekly reflection, but I also at the end of every year go through my entire calendar, look at what happened, look at what I did this year, and reflect on what do I want to do more of next year, less of next year, what's my marketing strategy for next year, or platforms I'm focused on, and so on and so forth. And I put together an entire guide about the questions that I use to plan my best year yet every year, and to plan my marketing plan for the next year. So questions around lead gen, around content nurturing, around what am I going to be doing with my email marketing strategy, things like that. And if you want that guide, it's a part now of the Work Smart Marketing Club, which is my monthly membership. And it's something where we gather 2 times a month as a small group, go through your questions you have about your business, and get you your next steps, along with resources, templates, things like that to save you time, bonus trainings, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in that, you can go to haileyrowe.com/worksmart. But using that every year is really helpful because I feel clear on my next year. And I think a lot of times when our business isn't growing, it's because we feel scattered and we feel like we don't have a plan and we haven't broken it down, things like that. But another key part of reflecting is looking at what has been getting in the way. Sometimes we just look at the positive of all the things I want to do, and we neglect what's been stopping me, or what's been getting in the way, or what's been slowing me down. And I think it's just as important when you do your end of year reflection to look at what patterns are wasting my time, draining my energy, things I need to clear out and stop doing, things I need to do less of, right? So just make sure you're looking at that as well, in addition to the positive, dreamy type of questions and planning. The next thing I do that's a good business habit is taking notes on every discovery call and keeping them all in one place. So if you're a coach, you're going to talk to a lot of people throughout the year, I hope, if you're getting discovery calls. And it can be very hard to remember, and to remember who to follow up with, and to know personal details about that person. So for me, I really like to keep notes with every person's name, how each person found me, where they're from in the United States, so I know my demographics, where I'm attracting the most people, and then where they're from if they're out of the States, what countries, etc. And my notes about what we talked about, what their goals were, what their struggles were, where we left off with the call, meaning were they thinking about it? Did they want to sign up? Did we need a follow-up call? Where did we leave off? And what's so cool about this too is you can take your document, you can upload it to ChatGPT at the end of the year, and you can say, hey, ChatGPT, summarize for me top struggles of my potential clients, top goals. What states were they from? Or what countries were they from? Where did they find me? Rank it in a chart so I know where are my most common places they find me. And it's so helpful to have that information. And once you know the top goals and struggles, you can plan your content accordingly. So people want to read it. They want to listen to you. So it's very valuable to have that information. Most people will forget or not record their call, or, keep notes on a notepad and then keep notes from somebody else on another place. And then it gets very overwhelming. Okay, so don't do that. Next habit, we have batching calls. So, a theme of this podcast is batching. And I do think if you're a new coach, you need to have a flexible schedule. You need to be willing to connect with people. And for me, I'm willing, so I have my calendar set up in a way where I have a bunch of, a big block of the day available for calls. And typically what happens is people book them back to back, or within 20 minutes of each other or whatever. And that's really nice because I can be in call mode. I can be ready for that and do it all at once. However, I also give the option where I say, if something on my calendar doesn't work for you, I'm willing to meet after hours or have a call in the evening or whatever. So some of my clients and some of my calls take place outside of that batch, and I'm being flexible about it because we need to be as business owners. However, I'm not making my entire calendar available 24/7 to where nothing else gets done. I'm burnt out. things like that. It's more of an exception as opposed to I'm just going to make my calendar available for 24/7. So batching your calls can be really important. You can either pick 4 hours a day in the morning, or you can make it 2 days a week, full days, or however you want to do it. But batching can be really helpful because when your mind is in that mode, you're probably going to perform better. Versus if you're switching tasks, like 1 minute I'm doing deep writing content work, and the next minute I'm talking to somebody about collaborating, your brain doesn't do as well with switching tasks. So we're just trying to notice with all of these habits, we're trying to work with your strengths, work with what we know about yourself rather than against it. However, we're also not labeling ourselves and confining ourselves to not be flexible. So yes, set some structure, but be flexible with it. So again, I batch my calls. However, I say, if we need to do after hours or whatever, we can do that. Next habit is keeping everything on my phone notes. And the reason for this is when I first started my business, I tried to be fancy. I tried to use Excel spreadsheets for everything, or Trello for everything, or project management tools. And what I have learned is that I need something that's portable, that I can access anywhere, that's easy for me to brain dump when I'm on the go and I get an idea, that doesn't have to be formatted in a spreadsheet, etc. The more complex you make a system, the less likely you are to do it. So for me, for my weekly to-do list, it's on my phone notes. Now, my longer term plans, my monthly goals, my monthly ideas, my yearly ideas, those live in Trello. But then I pull from Trello just for the week ahead and the day ahead in my phone notes. And that is very helpful because I want it with me. I don't want to feel like I have to do extra steps to find my to-do list, and it keeps me focused. That's the other thing. It's actually more of a mental practice too, of extracting from my big giant brain dump what I want to do this week and having it in one place, which is nice and causes me to have to prioritize, then have my huge giant life list in front of me every week and having to pull off of it that day each day. I would rather go to my weekly list on my phone, only look at that for the week, so I'm very laser focused, and pull from that, right? So keeping everything in an easy place for yourself. Next habit is to not reinvent the wheel all the time. So here's what I mean by that. If I do a guest training for somebody's group program, I'm going to make that guest training something that I could do for other programs. Or if I make one freebie for someone, it's going to become a freebie now that I use for everybody. Or if I make an offer, I'm not jumping to make a brand new offer very quickly at all. I've been selling the same 3 offers for several years, and that is pretty much what I do all the time. So what I see others do that drains them is when something doesn't work right away, they think they need to reinvent the wheel. And there may be some truth to that, meaning you may need to make tweaks. You may need to change the messaging. You may need to explore different price points. We might need to change some things. However, to jump to that conclusion so quickly when you haven't made the offer to at least 100 people and think that you need to go remake something from scratch is not a good practice. Same thing with every time you book a new podcast interview, you thinking you need to completely come up with a brand new topic rather than having like 3 core topics you typically talk about, again, is draining. So anything that you can do to focus in your business on refining and up-leveling and rinsing and repeating the same structure or system is better, in my opinion, and doing it better is key instead of jumping to new things all the time, right? So if you are somebody who gets very tempted to reinvent the wheel, every time something doesn't go your way, pause and just say, what if I don't need to completely reinvent something new here? What if it's just pulling different levers with the current thing that I have? Okay. And the last habit is to save and document any repetitive tasks in your business. So if every week you edit a podcast, you need to document those steps or film yourself doing it, write it out, have it so that if you couldn't do it one week because you had the flu or something, you could give it to a 7-year-old and the directions are so clear that somebody else could do it for you. And this is something you'll do slowly in your business, but you need to have these systems somewhere so that everything's not on you. And one day when you can hire a virtual assistant or you can have a team or something like that, you don't have to do the repetitive tasks. You can get out of editing your podcast, or you can get out of replying to, if people pitch, like for me, people pitch me to be on my podcast all the time. And I have a response that I send now about, if it's a yes, no, or what's the next steps or whatever. So I'm not rewriting that every single time, right? And Gmail actually has like a system or a thing that you can save certain templates and use them. So anything that is repetitive, ask yourself, how can I make this not something I have to redo every single time? Save all your guest trainings you do on repeat in a folder so they're easy to find. If you make the same, if you keep answering the same question in messages, save that response, put it in your phone notes, right? So if you are listening to this and you are excited about these habits and you want a little recap, I'm going to quickly recap. The first one is answer your social media messages all at once in a place where it's good for you. Either you're waiting somewhere, you're at the airport, you're in a long car ride, whatever. For me, I don't want to do it when I'm home and at my computer because I can do other tasks on my computer that are more important in that moment. If something takes you less than 5 minutes, do it now. If you are opening your emails and responding at all hours of the day, make a rule. You don't open emails unless it's your time to be answering them, and maybe batch it. Plan your content in batch mode as well, maybe on airplanes like I like. You can do it whenever, but I like doing that. Do a weekly reflection of what went well, what didn't go well, what you want to improve, how many offers you made to your free or paid offers, things like that. Lessons of the week. Keep yourself accountable with that. Listen to business podcasts or personal development podcasts or audios on your walks in the car, things like that. Less scrolling, more creating or seeing social media as only for business. And your year with a reflection. Join the Work Smart Marketing Club if you want the reflection guide that I use and the marketing plan guide that I use. Do discovery call notes in one place. Track where everybody found you, always. Batch your calls. Keep everything in your phone notes if you can, or somewhere where it's easy for you. A planner, whatever you need to do, but don't have 12 million different notepads and hope that you remember everything. And we got 2 more: save and document repetitive tasks, and don't reinvent the wheel in your business. Instead, focus, refine, and improve. And actually, one other habit that just came to mind that I constantly am reminding clients of is when you're making trainings or lead magnets or posts, go deeper rather than wider. And what I mean by that is, rather than having a training about all of your content pillars, so let's say you had a training like 5 keys to break free from emotional eating, and you're going to cover stress management, you're going to cover nutrition, you're going to cover exercise. That's a really broad training. and it kind of makes it less juicy and less unique. Versus if you go deep on one part of that, that can be its own training. So, and it can tie nicely into your offer because you're only covering and going deep on one pillar, right? So what I mean is you might have a training instead of 3 steps to not emotionally eat at dinner time. And it's just about dinner time. And it's just about the 3 things you can do leading up to dinner tonight to not emotionally eat, versus 5 ways to stop emotionally eating for life and huge topics, right? Go deeper rather than wider. That's another habit in business that has been really helpful for growth, for making my content more unique, for helping people see tangible wins from my content and my lead magnets, things like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you like the Health Coach Nation podcast, please leave us a written review on iTunes. We really appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.